So, could one person change the world forever? I was listening to Dan Carlin. He's a very famous podcaster in the world of history, and he posed the question. What person, which human being do you think changed the world forever in the 20th century? The most important person. In other words, the actions of one single individual, which had the most consequences. I think Adolf Hitler. I think Joseph Stalin. uh, you know, those big named people. But Dan Carlin argues that it's a guy named Gavrilo Princip. And with this guy, this 19-year-old kid, and the actions that he takes in August or July 1914, well, without his actions, we wouldn't have the world we live in today. We would not have a world of terrorism. We would not have 9/11. We wouldn't have the Cold War, World War II, or especially World War I. We wouldn't have the conflict in Israel and Palestine, and we probably would not have had decolonization occur in the time it did. All because a 19-year-old kid did something incredible. And it's very unsettling for people to think that. It's very unsettling to think that the actions of a child, a young adult, could change the world forever. Where even today in 2020, we feel the ramifications, the consequences of this. Where you go to airports and you have TSA, where you look at the news and there's unrest in Israel and Palestine and the Middle East. All of that could be directly traced back to this kid, Gavrilo Princip, this Serbian kid, because he lit the spark that created a war unlike anything we've ever seen. And World War I dramatically destabilized the world. Because, as you know, World War I led to World War II. And World War II led to the world we live in today. So, with nuclear weapons, I'm telling you, this guy, his actions are so incredible, and they have dramatic consequences. So think about that. As a human being, you're not even that far off from this person's age. If you're one of my students, you could dramatically change the world like this guy. And I'm not advocating, terrorism, but I'm just saying that it's incredible to think that. So what's even more incredible is the actions that this person took should not have happened. If you were a gambler and looked at the odds of him doing what he actually did, it would seem near impossible. Now let's cut around beating the bush and say what he did. This guy assassinated the Archduke of Austria-Hungary, a guy named Franz Ferdinand. So he was a murderer. He assassinated somebody with a pistol, him and his wife. And here's Gavrilo Princip here on the bottom, age 19. This is his mugshot after he murdered the Archduke and his wife, Sophia. So he is a part of a group called the Black Hand. In 1914, this ethnically Serbian 19-year-old joined a terrorist organization that called for the unification of all Serbians. Now, the best way we could explain what he did is by looking at a map of the place he lived. So he lived in Austria. He lived in the Austro-Hungarian Empire. So this is a map dated probably around 1914. Okay? He's Serbian. Now, if you notice, Serbia is its own country. But what gets this man really angry is, do you see the city Sarajevo? There are many ethnic Serbs living here. So Gavrilo Princip says, we want to make Serbia larger so ethnic Serbs could live in a country for Serbs. He's very upset that there are ethnic Serbs living in a country that doesn't even speak their language. They speak Austrian and Hungarian. the leaders of this empire are Austrians and Hungarians. Never do we see Serbs uh, get as much power. So it's almost like this crusade to give freedom and liberty to the ethnic Serbs stuck in this prison of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. And Gavrilo Princip sees the Austrian royal family as the source of this imprisonment. So his group, called the Black Hand, learned that in July 1914, they learned that the Archduke and his wife of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, kind of like a big wig, a member of the royal family, is going to be on parade in Sarajevo in an open car. Easy target. So, Gavrilo doesn't go alone. He goes with quite a few other guys. I believe it was around 19. A lot of people went to assassinate this man, and the plan was to murder him on that day. So imagine this, okay? I want you to picture it for a moment. So this is from the film called Sarajevo from 2014. I found it on Netflix here. It illustrates what would have happened. It kind of shows you what this would have looked like at the time. So all of the assassins lined up on the street, as you see here, as the car drove by, ready to pull the trigger. A few men had pistols, a few men had bombs. So there was no way that the Archduke was going to make it out alive. As the car turns with him and his wife, we see the first man pull out a pistol, and he cannot bear to shoot the Archduke because his wife is there, so he turns away. Another man turns away out of fear, so two assassins ran away without pulling the trigger. A third one took out a bomb out of his pocket and threw it at the car. The bomb landed inside of the Archduke's car. And the Archduke, in like an athletic move, picked up the bomb, threw it out of the car, and the bomb exploded over another vehicle, wounding dozens. So the assassination plot failed. All of the assassins run for their lives, including our 19-year-old Gavrilo Princip. There he is. And he's getting chased by the police. So the assassination failed. The Archduke speeds away. I mean, it's over. It's done. You failed in the assassination. The Archduke is free. Gavrilo has a capsule of poison. He puts it in his mouth because he did not want to get caught alive by the Austrian police. So he takes the thing of poison, puts it in his teeth, jumps off the bridge into the river. But it's summer. The river isn't as deep. In fact, the river was just very, very shallow. So poor Gavrilo Princip practically breaks his legs and bites the pill anyway. So, oh great, he killed himself. But actually, no. The poison was probably expired or something. The poison didn't work. It just made Gavrilo foam at the mouth and throw up. So the police capture him, but they just see a man throwing up. They let him go. And Gavrilo is upset. He failed Serbia. He failed his mission. You know? And he had his pistol in his pocket. But he failed. So he went to his favorite sandwich shop in Sarajevo and just sat there, bought himself a sympathy sandwich. He's eating at the shop. Meanwhile, the Archduke and his wife are exiting the hospital because they decided, like good leaders and royal family members, to visit the wounded. So they go visit the wounded, and they're on their way back. But he's not from Sarajevo. The driver of the vehicle gets lost. Okay, so the vehicle is it's not even on the official parade route. The vehicle is just driving through the city. The driver takes a wrong turn. and realizes he goes up a one-way street. The car stalls, which means the car breaks down, can't move. And this is an old car from 1914. So the driver gets out and attempts to, restart the car. Well, guess where the car stopped? The car stopped directly in front of the sandwich shop that Gavrila Princip was eating at. He couldn't believe his eyes. He dropped his sandwich and saw that the Archduke Franz Ferdinand and his wife were right in front of him. It was destiny. Yeah, it failed before, but now it's meant to be. The Austro-Hungarian Duke is right in front of him. It's on his lap. Go for it. Gavrilo grabs his pistol, charges down the stairs, and empties his pistol into the Archduke's chest and his wife's chest. The car speeds off, and the Archduke and his wife pass away. And one of the men in the vehicle talked about what he saw later, and one of the last words that was on the Archduke's breath was he was saying, Sophia, Sophia, don't die. Think of the children. He's talking to his wife, saying, please don't die. You have to live for our children. And whenever they would say, Archduke, are you okay? Hang in there. He would say, I'm fine. I'm fine. But a gurgling sound in his throat, along with blood coming out of his mouth, said opposite, and he died. This was a terrorist attack. This photo that you see was taken on the day of his assassination. By the way. And there he is. This is the man who was assassinated along with his wife. But it's really important for you to understand that this was a terrorist attack. And at the time period, most people in Europe believed that, this was just a random attack that happened in the Balkans, Southeast Europe, where there's always conflict. It's always going to happen. But it was the spark that led to the most destructive war in history up until that time period. Gavrilo probably did not know that his actions would lead to a world war, because all he wanted was to give Serbia to ethnic Serbs within the Austro-Hungarian Empire. He did not want a war that would lead to 38 million people dying. That war eventually led to another more destructive war, which led to the introduction of the atomic bomb and nuclear weapons that even in 2020 we are still dealing with today. All of this in a single act led by a 19-year-old kid that probably should not have even happened. It's amazing how the car just stopped right in front of that sandwich shop. It blows my mind every time I think about that. That sometimes with history, it's almost as if things are meant to happen in a way, But it did. It did happen. And Austria-Hungary would not stand for a terrorist attack. So they went and eventually declared war on Serbia. And as you will find out in these readings for this module, the dominoes were set and Gavrilo kicked them over. Militarism, alliances, imperialism, and nationalism created the tensions that lasted all throughout the 1800s, which eventually exploded into war as a result of this terrorist attack. So when we look at today, 2020, and the influence of Gavrilo and his actions, I think of events like terrorism in the Middle East. The Middle East is the new Balkans, And whenever I see actions like terrorism or assassinations, I kind of wonder if something very similar to 1914 would happen in 2020. We need to be aware of this history, and we need to know that this event, terrorism, what caused World War I, could happen again. And we cannot let it happen again, especially with the weaponry we have now. So that's the video. I hope you learned a little bit about the assassination in more detail there. And I will see you later. Thanks.